Hi, everyone. It is always an absolute joy to spend time with my good friend Rory Duff. We always have very different conversations, and the reason for that is that Rory is such a pioneer, so unique in his work. He's, as many of you know, he barely needs any introduction these days, but he's a geobiologist. Over the last few years, he's focused on the Earth's energy lines. He's going to give us an update on that today, which is going to be exciting. And he's also set up some group meditation sort of learning modules that he's working with, which have a lot of synchronicity and a lot of telepathy happening within those groups. I'm sure we're going to touch on that. He also runs dowsing courses, seminars, other meditation courses as well. He never stops working. He has such a rich offering. He's written several books, including Grail Hunter, Grail Found, and Grail Bound. And he's going to tell us for the first time today, he's going to publicly announce a universal prophecy linked to his other book, Grail Bound, which I'm on tender hooks to hear about because I don't know about it either. So his work has become increasingly prominent in this time of the rapid evolution of consciousness. So welcome, Rory. I can't wait to speak with you today. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Pam. It's a delight to be here, and I'm so looking forward to chatting with you as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we always have fun, and I love the spontaneity of it because you always bring such rich information through that is, as I say, so different from anyone else's. So
There's so much goes on between the last time we speak.
I know it's crazy, can't keep up. So, so what I know everyone will be interested in is an update on the Earth's energy lines, because you have been saying that at the end of 2024, we're going to come into kind of year-round harmony for those for the next 200 years. So I know everyone will be interested, given the state of the world. Are we still on track? What's happening with the Earth's energy lines? Because originally, I think we started off at kind of one day of harmony, and then it's gradually increased and increased.
Yeah, goodness, that was back in 2007, 2008. We were looking at it wasn't even a full day. The harmony time lasted for like 8, 9 hours. And, the big Michael and Mary lines did a quick sped up to get into line with the smaller lines, and gradually the harmony frequency started building up to the frequencies of the larger lines, and then it moved into suddenly a 1.5 day frequency, and then it jumped up to 3 days, and then up to 6 days, and we were up at 6, 5, 7, and then the next bit was 9, and it's slowly sort of edged up. And about a couple of years ago, you began to look. This is like it's going to become full year roundabout harmony, where the energies at the symmetrical nodes would turn into these double torus shapes and sing in a wonderful way. And we've been measuring the length of time of these harmony periods for a while now, and it looked like it was going to be December where we would come into full year harmony, or non-stop harmony time for like 200-300 years. I mean, technically it's going to be next March, but I'll explain why. Because if you look at the gap between the increases between December and March harmony time, the numbers of days was 35 days harmony, and from March it lasted 41 days as a projection, and then looking on from the projection from June to September, it's a 50-day harmony period. The September to December one is 65 days. So the last bit of non-harmony will be like, November, and the beginning of December this year. And because the next time, the full harmony time is going from December to March, and that's like leapt up from 65 days to now 96 days. So there's no unharmony at all. So we're on track. And what was interesting was the increments that was going up almost, and it could actually be down. I can't say as accurately all that. Looking like there's an exponential sort of increase, a bit like the Fibonacci. spiral mathematics, a mathematical increase based on that sort of curve, which would be very natural. And
Just to
especially with
clarify for the people who don't know, that it's linked to the solstices and equinoxes, isn't it? It
yeah,
was
it starts the day. Well, it started the day before the solstice and equinoxes, which really confused us, because why was it not on the solstices and equinoxes? Until we learned about the ancient Hebrew holy days called the Tekufa, which is the Tekufa means it's the last day of a cycle, and it was clearly reverting to the sun's cycle, and the last day of the sun cycle was always the day before, and that was when the harmony time was, and that's when they called the holy days. And of course, the day after was a celebration day. Everyone remembers the summer solstice feast of St. John, and everyone had fun on that day. So that's where you remember it. So that's where it started from, and it then gradually got longer. And yeah, it's because of these new powerful source energies which are coming through to the planet, and it comes through to what's causing these lines. And we think it's the neutrinos now getting through to the inner core of our Earth, and imparting energy on the inner core, which is because it's solid, it's expanding and contracting in the liquid outer core, really like a big drum, pounding, and like the beating heart of the Earth, which is incidentally exactly what the Anishinaabe thought, and their Medewiwin, their shaman in their lodges would call it the water drum. The Earth's water drum is beating the Earth's drum beat, and it's essentially getting louder and louder, which is the intensity is increasing because our magnetic field is decreasing. It's the one biggest thing I can't believe no one's talking about, apart from a few independent scientists and researchers. Physicists aren't talking about it. Governments certainly aren't talking about it. But the increase in cosmic energy we're receiving from all other places, the sun included, is really causing an evolutionary change on Earth. And on the energy lines, because the intensity is increasing, we're finding a new phenomenon. I can't remember what I mentioned about shadow lines to you before.
no.
It's I did mention write about it in my last newsletter, but very interesting that when you've got vibrations coming out from the center of the Earth, it's very similar to seismic waves. I mean, whenever there's an earthquake, the Earth rings like a bell. Well, that ringing is just vibrations going back and forth in standing waves. And if you look at the surface of the Earth, if you have vibrations purposely sent down into the Earth, it bounces back off all the different density contrasts. And the geophysicists find out how the structures of the Earth underneath are for mineralization zones, for where all deposits are. So what you get is, if any vibrations bounce off these different types of rock and they caught back up in the surface again, and they pick them up on geophones and they get their geoseismic surveys. Well, it's the same, but the vibrations are coming from the center of the Earth, and they bounce back off of the density contrast at the surface, off of the density contrast just below them, and back up. So if you've got an energy line here which is getting stronger, one line here, it's bouncing back down again and up again. So you're getting a shadow line either side of the main line. So the interesting thing is it's giving you the same sort of feeling being on the shadow line as it is on the main line. So where we thought originally that these energy lines would widen and widen and widen, and everywhere would be covered in these energy lines, it's taken this different path where this main energy line is widening. You can still see them widening in a few feet. Well, now the shadow lines have appeared, and you'll probably get shadow lines after that. So it's the rebounds, if you like, of all these vibrations that are causing these things. It's making mapping an absolute headache, I have to say, because you've got so many lines crossing over each other, and you've got to work out which one's the main line, which one's the shadow lines, and they're all crisscrossing. But we're definitely everywhere. The vibration, the linear high pressure concentrations are going to be everywhere on the surface of the planet, and so that's the big news, that we're being soaked with this,
And that's because of
this way.
the drop in the magnetic shield, and therefore more solar flares are getting through, and it happens to be the peak of the solar cycle 25. And so everything is interconnected, and that when the ionosphere is more unstable. So is that also linked to more seismic activity potentially?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very true in the astrology as well.
geomagnetic weather is definitely now linked to earthquake prediction as well. Where is getting quite accurate from the point of view of the position of the Earth and the solar storms and that sort of thing. Yeah. So
It's so interesting. I've noticed since Pluto moved into Aquarius for the second time in January, everybody is now talking about space weather in a
yeah,
way they never did before. We just talked about the weather, but now it's space weather. There's a much greater awareness of that. So you mentioned that we'll have beginnings of Earth year-round harmony time from about November, December this year, which is exactly when Pluto enters Aquarius for the third time for the next 19 years, 19 to 20 years. So does that represent an extended period of peace as you see it, Rory?
I actually not sure about the word peace because I look at it more of a form of rapid learning.
Okay.
Where we are really able to connect with the earth in ways which are more conducive to learning more about the changes going on within us. It's offering us stability at these harmony times where this you can pretty much go to these energy lines and connect exactly the same way again and again and again. If you choose to do it, this is the whole point about we're always left with a choice. You don't have to do anything, and whatever you'll be like the pinball bouncing off whatever you're going to be bouncing off, or you can take choice to actually, well, I'm going to embrace this and I'm going to go on this learning curve and I'm going to ride that wave, and see where it goes. And everything is like separating out into this choice. You can see it in whether you want to be the helper or you want to be helped, whether you want to follow truth or whether you're happy with your lies. It's just whether you want to learn or whether you want to be lazy. It's incredible how everything is being matched like this. And you think, well, there's a separation, but the weird, strange thing about the separation is that by separating out, it allows the core group to grow and grow and grow. And that attracts more and more people.
Yeah.
So more and more people will come over to the light, yeah, that's the positive side. So as for your initial question, whether it'll bring peace, probably not initially. There's an element of motivation that people need.
Yes.
And getting out of rubbish and getting out of the mire, making your choice is the thing. So I can't cope with this anymore. I'm going to find a different way, and that's what we're finding. Lots of people are thinking that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And you and I are, in parallel with that. So that it seems to be suggesting, Rory, that we will go back to almost the ancient wisdom that indigenous people have never lost, and that very advanced civilizations in our past, they were just living in harmony with the earth, in right relationship. They understood nature,
Yeah.
they understood shamanism, they understood that everything had life force, everything was alive. You seem to be suggesting that that's what we're reconnecting to, because I'm seeing that really clearly in the astrology, particularly the dwarf planet archetypes.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up because I'm finding, we talked about the universal prophecy. This is this return to group consciousness that came from Steiner's work originally, and he realized that people go through, mankind goes through cycles of consciousness, from group consciousness to individual consciousness to group consciousness. And it's looking like it's roughly every 12,500 years. And what we're finding, generally speaking, is that the legends of the last time we exited group consciousness have been kept alive. It's like these really magically important stories that the ancestors knew they had to keep alive. I mean, the Hopi group is one example, and there are others like the account of Genesis. If you look at the one in the Bible, you get a gist of what happened. If you go back to the Hebrew Bible, you get a bit more of the truth. But if you go back to the original first account of Genesis that you can find, it's actually the Chaldean account of creation, which is found in cuneiform tablets by an old Egyptologist called Henry Smith, I think it was, back in the late 1880s. And that is when you start reading that account, it's like, well, this is the exit from paradise that mankind went on. It wasn't Adam and Eve, it was mankind coming through the abyss and coming into having to learn how to live in the world again after you didn't need to speak, you didn't need to eat. It was like, but you're living in a completely different sensory environment because the energetic conditions back there had widened our perceptions to such an extent that we were experiencing life in completely different ways. So this whole exit from this, as these energetic energies started disappearing as we come out of the particular galactic current sheet, I think, but, required us to learn how to work, to talk, to eat, and then so there's the legend side. But now we're getting the prophecies, which tell us how we're going back into group consciousness, and this is where we start looking at the prophecies from all the different cultures around the world, and they're all talking about the same thing: how we prepare for it, what we can expect, and it's a common theme. And when you study them all together, you begin to actually think, "Whoa, this is now talking about how we're going back into group consciousness and what we're going to learn to expect to find." And working in groups now, we're beginning to see the similarities of how we're moving from individually thinking to group thinking, and how incredibly colorful that's becoming, how 3D thinking is compared to this individual 2D thinking of our own. So I'm really trying to encourage people coming together in groups, and we're working with, as you know, the Sacred Path modules. We're doing dream sharing dreams in groups, meditations in groups, and discussions about the whole things, a range of things, of philosophies and meditation and spirituality in groups. And it's proving phenomenally successful, and people are having a lot of fun with it. So that's absorbing my time, and it's adding another dimension for synchronicity. It allows new things to come through.
Well, I mean, that's very much the Aquarian energy, the group energy, seeing yourself as a unique piece of the puzzle, a unique essence, but nevertheless feeding that into the group. And, you know, these mass meditations, you're involved in them, Rory, so am I. And it's just thrilling to see the telepathy and the synchronicities coming through. But just going back to what you were saying, that these shifts in consciousness happen about every 12,000 years. Well, that's half of the precessional cycle.
Yeah.
And it seems to be related also to the end of Kali Yuga as well. And it's also seems to be related to the Earth passing through the photon belt, that period of time. It's also not far off Sedna's orbit. Sedna is a dwarf planet with an 11,400-year orbit. And
Yeah.
I know when she makes transitions, as she just has on the 27th of April, for another 40 years, roughly, that is very related to big shifts in consciousness. When she last entered Gemini, which is where she is right now, that was really the beginning of civilizations like Göbekli Tepe, etc., and big shift from hunter-gatherer to more settled farming. You know, there's a very significant shift in consciousness. So is it also, do you believe, related to, I don't know how much you know about the Sedna myth, but it is, again, this total metamorphosis of humanity and of consciousness that's fairly close to the 12,000-year cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything like it in as much depth as you, but I see these things like Pluto and Sedna as triggers.
Yeah.
It's like everything is influencing us to a greater or lesser extent at a particular time. And right now, it's the turn of Pluto and Sedna to just nudge the whole thing into the next gear, and it throws that extra amount and weight to the whole change. It's like a starter motor to get the car going, sort of thing. So,
Yeah, yeah, and
does
it's
that make
very much,
sense?
yeah, absolutely, and it's very much this year and also next year, and they're also in very particular geometry to Homer as well, who's one of the strongest symbols for New Earth. So is this the universal prophecy? Is this really what you wanted to share with us, Rory?
Not quite. I need to get in this, but
Yeah, I'm dying to hear about more
the
detail.
as you know, I try and stick to just following, because how do you know what to read next? How do you know what to do or where to go? And it's so, I'm so curious naturally on so many things. I've got to rein that in. And I've tried to just say, well, leave it to synchronicity. If I'm supposed to be reading this or investigating this, then I will. And I had a massive, big kick into gear with Egypt just recently. It's a huge subject, as you know, and I've been asked to do this 3-day seminar in just outside of Dublin in August. I'm talking about prophecies there, and it's called the Emerald Awakening one, which is it's still got a few seats left if anyone, but it's going to be the most amazing thing about lighting up the energy lines and groups all around the island. And I'm also talking about group meditation there as well. But I found quite quickly that the couple of alignments through running through Ireland headed down into Egypt, and I'm thinking, oh well, maybe it's time to look at Egypt. You never quite know, you know. And then another friend says, I'm going to Giza. Can you give me some ideas of where the main lines are around Giza? Well, I had a kind of an idea where they were anyway. I hadn't thought, well, maybe there's a chance to do this. Maybe I should get my head around that. And then I had this group meditation at the time of the eclipse with the meditation group I'm in, and I spoke to Lily to get permission, to Lily Brunton, who's well worth having a chat with. She's what about her work, but as soon as the meditation began, all I got was this song in my head, and it was repeating again and again and again. I couldn't remember what on earth it was. I knew the song, but I didn't know the name or what it was at. So, and then I mentioned it afterwards in the sort of debriefing of it, and another chap says, "Oh, I know what that is. That's where have all the flowers gone?" And Lily sticks out to say, "I know where they've gone." She says, what? Yeah, because my whole meditation was the flowers on Earth have gone, and I found them in the cracks on the moon, growing in the cracks on the moon. This is the eclipse. It's just at the same time as the eclipse. And I'd remembered at that point that at the end of my song, this goose, this white goose, had flown around and landed on the top of a flagpole and just looked at me. And I said that to them, and Lily said, "Are you sure it was a goose and not a swan?" Oh. I said, "No, I'm pretty sure it was a goose." And she said, "Well, do you want to check the swan?" Because and then what came out, she said that I should read the Cygnus mystery book by Andrew Collins. Okay, so I'm on. It's like the song and rare flowers. I'm thinking I better follow this one up, this synchronicity, and also there's similar messages within all the group members on something along these same sort of lines. So I studied and I got Andrew Collins's book out, and there it was in the chapter. It's the swan goose connection to eternity, and that led me to his another chapter on the Well of Souls, and the importance of a really significant place where it was the primordial mound where the god Sokar, the oldest Egyptian god Sokar, had his house of Sokar. It's the primordial mound where all the gods first appeared, the Zet Tepi of Egypt. And this is a place on the Giza Plateau, which I hadn't really studied before. So this was a place before the pyramids were built. Okay. And it was the place where the original node was. And it was a little hill on top of this plateau. It's the oldest part of the Giza Plateau, called Gebel Gibli. I remember the word Gibli because that comes up in the Universal Prophecy later. I looked at that name and thought, I can't believe this, because I only just come across this Universal Prophecy recently, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But then Gebel Gibli is this little ancient hill, which was where the original node was. That's where the primordial mound, the very first mound, as you know, that's where the mound of creation, where the gods came to. And so that's before everything else in Egypt. But of course, the energy lines now run from the node, which is only a kilometer away at the Pyramid of Khufu. And when I looked at this alignment, I knew this alignment. I'd mapped it pretty much all around the world. It's one of the most powerful type 4 alignments you come across. And apart from running through the very powerful node at the pyramid, it now ran through exactly where this sanctuary was in Gebel Gibli. And to give you an example of how powerful this line is, you track it across to the Greek islands, and there's an island Patmos there. It runs straight through a cave in Patmos, where John the theologian had his vision of revelations from an angel. And he recorded all that down. So now we have revelations, which is one of the universal prophecies for returning to group consciousness. You carry on this line, it gets through what they call Germany's Stonehenge, called the Sonnentemple, which is the Sun Temple not far from Leipzig. You follow it on, you go all the way up to Orkneys, where I went as a little boy with my grandmother, aged 15. I was running around Stones of Stennis and Ring of Brodka, goes through that, through Skara all the way on now to Iceland. And I was asked to do a sacred site search by a lady in Reykjavik 2 or 3 years ago. And I found this line going right through an old Viking temple in a tiny little fishing village called Grindavik, which has hit the news this last year because it
With
had all this large,
volcanoes. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. A lot of volcanic.
And the connections go on because I have a friend who had a large ranch just in southern Montana, and she said, "Can you do a huge geological survey on the lands there?" And I found the line running through the sacred prior gap of the Crow Indians, all the way down across America. And it exits the beach in California, not far from Yogananda Paramahansa's Self-Fellowship Center. And I've actually stood on that line training people a few years ago and know the node nearby. So I've had this connection to, but this is the most incredible energy line, and phenomenal things have happened to people. And here it is, it goes running through this place, Gebel Gibli. So I'm thinking, oh, time to investigate Egypt. And almost immediately I realized that I come across this ancient, old non-mainstream independent philosopher who researched the temple at Luxor for 12 years. And I can't believe I've never heard of this person's work. This guy is a Gnostic, hermetic philosopher, unbelievable, called Schwaller de Lubitsch. Have you come across Schwaller de Lubitsch before?
No,
No,
no.
nor had I. And you start looking at his work in the Temple Luxor, and when he was there, and he's not mainstream Egyptologist, so he develops his own philosophies based on hermetic and Gnostic principles, might I add, which is interesting. And he found all the hieroglyphs on the internal external walls, and then all the partition walls had the hieroglyphs on them. So you've got, like, if you had 8 walls, you've got like 16 layers of hieroglyphs, and then 2 on the outside. So he found if you superimpose them all, like the walls were completely invisible, you could look through them at this completely superimposed image of hieroglyph on hieroglyph, which gave the hieroglyphs a completely different meaning. And he said this is a much deeper, more symbolic meaning. And listening to what he's saying about hieroglyphs and trying to learn about all these things, it's not just like a picture which means this means an apple, or this means a message, or it's like, now you've got the N sound, for instance, N. Well, that was represented by a wavy line. You can sort of think of a sort of vibration, and there would be a more of a meaning to that depending on where that N was next to another picture. So that depending on its position up and down and what it was next to it, it had a second layer of understanding, and then a tertiary layer of understanding depending on other hieroglyphs that were next to it. So there's always deeper and deeper layers. And he was saying, in order to understand the deep meanings of hieroglyphs, you had to go into a deep meditative state. And I started thinking, hang on a minute. We're beginning to look like now what happens when you exit group consciousness. If you're in that point where all the legends are talking about how you're beginning to, you don't need to talk to people. You're just thinking telepathically and empathically with them. But if you're losing that slowly as you exit group consciousness, as the energetic environment starts disappearing, maybe because the magnetic field is changing, or we're coming back out of the current galactic current sheet, you're losing the ability to think like you were before. So you're having to find other words to kind of like come up by saying, well, and you communicate in earliest forms of language, which we probably thought the cavemen just grunted, but in fact they were going through this transition of communication. And what would have been more obvious to them was, well, communicate in symbols, which was conveying this natural ambiguity of symbolism. So you would move through this phase of exchanging and communication through not quite being in unity consciousness, but in a form of coming to know something. And we were looking at this is the beginnings of what we're seeing in group work, where we're moving away from the want to know something, but we're moving to coming to know and investigating the deeper meaning. So you're looking at hieroglyphs are being producing this form of communication as the exit communication. And a great, we're seeing how we're moving into this interconnectivity and experiencing symbolism more. And we don't need to talk to each other. We can like express ourselves and understand ourselves without actually having to pinpoint it and know it. So I found that was a fascinating aspect of it, coming back into group consciousness from looking at the symbols of hieroglyphics. And that led on to huge other things in finding in Egypt, where if you find out where the lines are, or more importantly, where the lines were, that's where people were buried. Wow. So if you've got you know where the nodes are, they didn't bury them on the nodes, because the nodes are where you have the rituals and the ceremonies to connect to the higher worlds. But if you knew where the nodes were and where the lines were coming to the nodes, people would be buried on the lines because they knew their soul would travel along the lines to the nodes to go to the Amenti, to the west, which is the Geb, the god of the other world, would take them on that journey through all the gates and over all the things that you come across in Egyptology. But when I started investigating where the lines were in some of these temples which connect up to Ireland, I'm thinking, that's why they buried those there. That's why they buried those there. So I was thinking, people are wondering why these things are buried in these places. You can see where there were the lines. But coming back to, I can't obviously talk about all of that right now, but I wanted to get back to this concept that Styler is talking about with group consciousness, and how we connect in ways to prepare ourselves for this. And he would say we need to start using imagination and then allowing inspiration to come in. And then when you moved on from that, then you were in that aware state, which allows the intuition and the insights to come through. And when you do that in meditation, these insights come through, and you listen in that aware state to other people's insights, and you get further insights. And all you have to do is start with the right intent and question. And then that's a very personal, curious thing. So you've got to get that out the way at the start in your conscious mind. You've got to then give it that immensity of will to know the truth. Don't care about the answer, just tell me the truth. Get out of the way. Be uncertain so you're not getting involved with it. And then allow your imagination to unfold. And then to go into that inspiration that comes through. And finally, if you're lucky, you'll get that insight, which is just pure magic. And you find it in art, and you find in pictures and music. And so we study these things, and because we're learning more about how we're going back into group consciousness. And this is where I come back to a phenomenal, my son asked me to come and watch a film. And I started watching this film. And about 20 minutes in, I mean, my jaw is hanging out. I'm going, oh my God, this is another universal prophecy. I'm just thinking, I cannot believe this. And I could how is it going to end? How is he going to do this? And I'm just trying to enjoy the film, but I'm doing this all interpreted because it's mirroring all these same things that you find in the other universal prophecies. And I'm like, I can't believe this. I really can't believe this. And every single symbol has that ambiguity. If you know about when you realize that symbolism, like Jung says, has to have a necessary ambiguity. If you surrender to that and just let it wash over you, and that sort of coming to know without us needing to know everything, allow it to wash over you in a form of coming to know. That's a process of moving back to understanding symbolism. It's like the first steps towards moving into that group consciousness and allowing yourself to do that. And I'm hearing, I can't believe this guy who's done this. So I did a bit of investigations because the title of the film didn't seem to sort of suggest this. And of course I realized this was the English title. The original was a Japanese title. And the original Japanese title was How Do You Live? And how do you live is a really interesting question, because if you open to that, if we did a group meditation, so how do you live? And then you just allow the subconscious to give you that information, maybe, and you just allow that to come through, and you do your imagination and you let the inspiration ride, and you're going to get insights that answer that question, how do you live? So I looked a bit further, and it seems that quite an amazing thing happened, that the person that did the screenplay, that did the writing and the creating of all of this, had said I didn't know how it was going to end. I just started doing the screenplay and allowed my imagination to run to do what it wanted to do. And he had nobody telling him what he couldn't do, which for a big budget film is rare.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he started exactly the same process as Steiner was talking about. Allow the imagination to go, like Jung did with his inner journeying, shamanic journey through the Red Book, which we spent hundreds of hours looking at in the modules. You end up getting this story, and what happened is that the story that was drawing it's an animation which won an Oscar at the recent Oscars by Hayao Miyazaki, and it's called in English it's called The Boy and the Heron. And it's about a boy. It's actually like Miyazaki's childhood, and his father was in the military and industry. But he goes to the countryside and he visits and he finds things happening to him in the countryside, and that's where the fantasy and the imagination takes off. And you begin to see all these connections. Oh, that means this. Oh, that's that. Oh my goodness, I can't believe this. So his imagination with that base first question has invited the subconscious to it's gifted him this prophecy, which links to so many other prophecies. And then the very last part of the film, I wondered how it's going to end. It's like, and the boy is told, and you'll forget it all. And of course, that's the moment he then begins to come out of group consciousness when you've forgotten everything. And I think, oh, I can't believe this. So that I can't wait for it to come out again because I want to go through it. But The Boy and the Heron, Japanese title, How Do You Live? And so it's an example. Yeah, the key thing which was strange, it was made by the company, the film production called Studio Ghibli. It's exactly the same spelling as Gebel Ghibli, where the place where the primordial mound is next to the pyramids of Khufu. So I was just thinking, this is just coming around in circles. It's just more validation in the really roundabout way, but what a ride. So,
What,
and
what you're
yeah,
talking about, Rory, is sort of surrendering to divine intelligence as opposed to controlling everything in our small individual minds, which is where we've been certainly all of this lifetime. It's going back to the original way that people lived, in this free flow with divine intelligence in a much more open way.
yeah.
And then you get much more information, so it's almost like remote viewing, isn't it? But on a bigger scale.
But it's collective. This is I
Yes.
mean, there's some great things people did individually, but we're moving into group consciousness, and it's the power of working in groups. And we've been finding out what, for instance, the Hopi, which Lily is an amazing expert, having lived with them. What did the Hopi do in their group work? How did they do their meditation? How do other organizations? How do other Native American Indians? How do other cultures do this? What are the things we can learn from them? And we've been really beginning to compile a lot of very helpful information that's going towards understanding group meditation, not just large numbers of people, but working groups. I was very blessed to meet a lady from Guam who came from a long line of Polynesian shamans. And she showed me the dance that they used to do as part of the group. Unfortunately, she only remembered one role. There were several other roles, so we don't quite get them all. But we're really beginning to build a picture of how we can well, more interestingly, what we can experience and what we can expect to experience, how we'll notice what's these changes, the subtleties that are going on, so that we can go with the flow. Because there's an ambiguity here which will send us quite crazy unless we can get some kind of feedback. And the only people we can get feedback with is people who we're collectively connected to. So the real name of the game is to get into groups, experience it collectively in groups so that you can talk to about it. And now the groups that are together are loving it. They're just experiencing a new vibrancy in their lives. And they live all over the place. They will just come together on Zoom, and once a year maybe they'll come together for a meeting. And yeah, God, sorry, I'll go off a bit on them, but on this because
No, no,
it's
it's wonderful. So with these multi-layered hieroglyphs, one layered on top of another, are you actually focusing on those in the group meditations to try and discover more about their meaning? Because it seems like it was almost a cradle of civilization from what
yeah.
you're suggesting, Rory.
We could do all of those things. absolutely. The problem is this: just because we can doesn't mean to say we should. There's like thousands of books out there, all the things we could do, but what is the one that's the thing that I should be doing now that's right for me or the group? And it's surrendering even your own uh, curiosity,
Wow.
and it's living with that so that you're becoming the servant. Now, you don't have to do this. You know, we've still got the choice to. That's the beautiful thing about it. You know, you've always got choice. But if you're going to choose to go down this vocational path, the Cathar path, Grail path, or path of individuation that Jung calls it, it just means you're looking to get on that journey of growth. Um, yeah,
And being led by synchronicity, essentially, led by spiritual guidance.
and insights, group insights, and your own building intuition, because all of those things. But more interestingly, it's the way of the flow of the energy. And I know you've had guests on that have talked about energy. Hope Fitzgerald, figure
Yes,
of
tell
eight.
me about that, because that was a synchronicity for you as well with the infinity wave with Hope Fitzgerald.
Yeah, well, I know she mentioned about the figure of eight being a representative of the energies, and I'm thinking, oh, and then she talked about stretching it out. I'm thinking, oh no, this is Peter Dunoff's energy wave. This is this is just describing this plasma-like ribbon of energy that you find in the galactic current sheet, bringing this energy with it, which is plasma and cosmic energy and a degree of dust. And what she's describing, and there's so much more to the weaving of the energies that was mentioned, and other things again it links with other aspects of energy work. But this particular one reminded me immediately of one of the universal prophecies by an amazing man called Peter Dunoff, who was one of the great Bulgarian philosophers, prolific writer. He started the Universal White Brotherhood that still meets today up in the mountains and around Rila, where they have their pan-eurythmy dancing to the sun, all dressed in white. And he died in 1944, but he had an end-of-life vision and recorded it. And it's pretty heavy to read because it sounds apocalyptic. But he talks about this huge cosmic wave coming across space and inundating us. He calls it a cosmic fire, but he also calls it a vibration where we will learn to live in harmony with it. There's a bit of a mixture. That any kind of vision, there's an ambiguity, but it's he talks about how it sweep through mankind, getting rid of all the old rubbish, and that to me was the cosmic energy coming through, but also the plasma. But the reversal zone inside the current sheet is this sort of figure of eight threaded weaving plasma, which is going to literally hit our electric sun, if you like, just bang sort of thing, and we're going to get this shockwave, which will there'll be a disturbance, but it brings this energy with it, which is creating change. So that reminded me instantly of what she was seeing symbolically as this wave of energy, which has hugely powerful things to it as well, and the figure of eight movement we'd only just sort of realized in meditation, which I can describe briefly. When you start meditation, you need to connect with everybody else,
Yeah.
and you do that through sending out love from your hearts to their hearts. And if you're all standing in a circle, you sort of move your shoulders around and face one person, then you face the other, you go around in the circle. And as you do this movement of your shoulders, you end up with a natural rotating figure of eight movement of shining this beaming love to everyone else's hearts, which is the energy wave, but you're moving in this figure of eight, and they're all doing this at the same time as well. So that gives you this really effect of all these bubbles of energy coming out from your heart, and of course the heart has a vortex chamber in the left ventricle. So when you're sending your heartfelt love out there, it's felt, and it comes back, and there's quite a bit more to it. I won't go into just now, but there's some mechanics and science behind this now, which is coming through. That the power is there because you're sending it to somebody particular.
Well, the heart is the largest electromagnetic organ, which is interacting with the electromagnetic soup all around us, the electromagnetically charged plasma. So that really makes sense. And the conversation I had with Zach just a few days ago really confirmed that as well. But it's very interesting you're talking about this cosmic wave in Peter Dunev's vision, because a lot of people are talking about that. Some geophysicists, some channelers, or talking about a potential huge cosmic wave which will come to Earth and affect every single person, but will be massively cleansing. And we have a lot of in the astrology, we have a lot of electromagnetic signatures this year and next, but it's a huge purging, cleansing of everything that we need to shed, that is no longer serving us, to almost shift to a higher level of being, to shift to less density, to more crystalline, and that, it appears, will be a very rapid change, not a slow linear one. I really see this coming in jumps, sort of quantum waves.
Yeah, it's certainly coming in waves. It's building in intensity. I have to say one thing, that is that the speed of change that we're being taken on is step by step and something we can cope with.
Yeah.
There is no point that the universal intelligence has to wipe us out. It is just illogical. We're something that's cared for and nurtured. So we're not going to get hit with something we can't cope with. We're not even going to be given anything which is going to completely decimate us. There's always reaction and action and reaction. So there's always a way forward. But there's no point fighting with it when you're in a rip current in surfing. You don't try and swim up the rip current. You just swim to the side. Just go with the flow. Come back in somewhere else. Our mistake is to try and fight all the time.
I really agree. And it's interesting with all this solar flare activity, because it affects people very physically, as you're well aware, Rory. And a lot of people have tried to kind of resist it in some way. And I said, no, go with the flow, welcome it in as evolutionary ingredients. And what seems to be happening as a process with all the people I know and interact with on social media, it seems that it can have very strong physical effects, whether that's chronic fatigue or insomnia or tinnitus or aches and pains or whatever. And then we seem to get to a stage where we can integrate it, we can assimilate it and say, okay, I can cope with this level of increased frequency. And then we get more solar flares. So, okay, they're more physically disturbing again. And then there's a process of integration and assimilation. So we upgrade, and we seem to be upgrading fairly rapidly, because just a month ago, I passed out on the sofa in my clothes for 13 hours. Woke up 13 hours later, not having moved. And so it was hitting me very hard in terms of sleep disturbance. But now I can sleep really well, even through X-class flares. Yeah. And many people are like me in that. So that there's a process of sort of constant, physical struggle, then integration, assimilation, and then we shift up. So it's like a barometer for our increased frequency, really. It gives us a measurement of how comfortable we can be with it.
There's an extra bit to that, though. It doesn't just assimilate, because we do find people who are, I get whacked out. I'm just lying there saying, wow, what's hit me? And yet other times, other people are getting whacked out, but yet I've just got this high speed energy. So you get this real boost, and you can suddenly do like 2 days work in one.
Yeah.
So there's an upside as well in this assimilation.
Absolutely.
Because so that's you sit back and think, whoa, how did I do all that?
Yeah, it's very focused. It gets very clear and very focused. And
Yeah,
I'm finding the same actually with massive workload. You know, we both share that massive workload. So it is a very exciting period. So we are we really have entered this evolution, this crucible of change right now. You're seeing it in the energy lines, we're seeing it with the Earth's inner core, we're seeing it in the place that the Earth is in space, we're seeing it in people's physical experience, all of the synchronicities that are leading your work. We're seeing it, you know, whichever way you cut the cake, we are seeing this rapid evolution of consciousness that is immensely exciting right now.
yeah, and I don't think, well, you say rapid. I don't think we've been rushed. I mean, you know, it's like when you haven't got a deadline. Oh, well, it's actually March next year. We've got to get everything ready. No, it's we've got a good 10 years. I mean, that sounds ominous as it is, but I mean, we're going to be taken through. It's going to crescendo for sure, but not at a rate which wipes us all out. So I'm fairly relaxed with the timing.
My sense, Rory, and it's a very deep sense I have, that since the total solar eclipse on the 8th of April and the Jupiter Uranus conjunction on the 20th of April, I really knew from the astrology that that would begin a whole cascade of events. And in April, so many people had this sense of cleansing, purging, shedding ancestral karma, shedding emotional baggage. And so many people were saying they felt lighter,
Yeah.
clearer, more focused, and I felt exactly the same. And
Mm.
so that was a significant pivot point, I think, April, to
Yeah.
launch us. Maybe it was onto a different timeline, a different
Yeah.
trajectory, but I know many people have felt that. We're in a different place now to
Yeah.
pre-April, is how I see the energy.
Yeah. For one, I mean, I used to like the occasional wine or a bit of whiskey, and I haven't had the desire to drink. I mean, purification. We distill all our water now. I mean, it's nuts, but that's the purification. It's yeah, and it will have that knock-on effect as we also purify our hearts. There's this desire to not misconstrue, not to have be misunderstood, because we don't want to come across as saying something which is not linked to the truth. So you're looking at trying so hard to be understood the right way and knowing how difficult that is. So there's an element of precision that we try and speak with and understand with now. A lot of purification coming in different ways. You know.
It's immensely exciting. We have so much to look forward to. Your work is progressing at great speed. My own research and discoveries. I just they're not enough hours in the day. So, and all of these things are starting to interlink other people's work. You know, all of these threads are coming together to form one unity consciousness ultimately. But there are going to be many new discoveries, I think, this year about water, about our hearts, about consciousness, about energy, about how the universe absolutely actually operates as a,
Mm.
as a as a living organism, as one living organism. And I think we're going to be getting to a place which actually the ancient peoples knew much more than we in our modern so-called
Yeah.
sophisticated civilization have known so far.
And one thing that I'm more and more people I've been, as you know, I've been training people to dowse for 10, 15 years now, and more of them are now working at their own areas
Yeah.
around the world, mapping these major alignments, finding these nodes, forming groups, and it's building. And it's exciting, and they're sharing their excitements with me. Every week they're sending me, "Oh, I can't believe what I've just found." That's exciting, because when we start getting that happening in a multiplication effect, we've got lots of groups popping on nodes everywhere, working on their own local problems energetically. That's exciting, because that really can ignite a country. And that, well, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, and unite. So how can people find more about your work, Rory, and how can they get involved in what you're doing with all of these group meditations, etc.?
The quickest and simplest thing is to nip to my website, roryduff.com.
Yeah.
There are, and I say that because things are changing all the time. The Sacred Network is undergoing a revamp, and I'll be talking more about that, because we've been it's it's just buckling under the numbers of people who are using it, and we need to sort of rethink that. But Yeah, could get them a website. You can find out what's going on there. Do please book up for the London seminars that coming in I think it's 20th of June and 6th of July, where we're really going through some groundbreaking stuff on what group meditation is helping us find out, and how it was done by lots of people around the world, and how we can learn from that. And there's a final workshop there, which is going to help you build a model that fits you and your group for meditation and group meditation, based on all that we've learned from different cultures around the world, which is very exciting. And I know that some of the people come, there's a few places left for that, but that's just, yeah, if you want to come to that, there's going to be an exciting offer for Sacred Path facilitators as well. So discounted to join the modules. And I've got 3 or 4 facilitators now who are just about to start new modules. So if you want to join the groups, I'll read my next newsletter in June. Bit of a blockbuster, that one. Sorry.
Rory's newsletters are epic, I have to say. Have to sit down with a large cup of tea. They are absolutely epic and free.
Yeah, and so get that one. They're all available on our website under the newsletter. But this next one coming out in June is going to have all the details for coming to these events and things. But something a bit more up your street as well there, because we're focusing on Aquarius.
Aha, aha! I should be very excited to see the developments in that.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Rory. I will put Rory's details below, and thank you so much for sharing this universal prophecy publicly with us, Rory. Premiere. It was your premiere, and it's so exciting. And I think there's so much more to discover about Egypt. We're just at the beginning of the remembrance of all that Egypt had to offer in ancient times. So thank you so much for your work, for everything you're doing in the world, for all your interactions with your groups. I know you work immensely hard 7 days a week. And thank you for the part you're playing in this evolution of consciousness. It's deeply appreciated.
Well, Pam, thank you very much yourself, because you're probably working harder than me, but your output is tremendous.
Equal match, I'd say, yes.
Thank you so much.
But thank you. I've absolutely loved the discussion. I hope it's really turned some lights on for many people out there as well who've watched this with us. Thank you so much, Rory. Take care, everyone. Lots of love.
Bye.